Let me begin by saying that I think it's great that those songs get to be heard again in whatever form, played by competent musicians. And if there's an opportunity for some of the musicians that I love and who have given me so much through the years to make an extra buck, I'm all for it. But with that out of the way, I find so many things that are not right about these Pantera things they are doing right now that I don't know where to start. One might be tempted to say, who cares what is it called? Let people have their fun, let those concerts happen. Who will remember or care in a couple of years if we're still around in this planet by then? It's a known fact that songs have a life of their own. They end up being more important than the musicians. And in fact, the bulk of concert goers probably does not care about the band history or who's playing. It's all good to them as long as the thing chugs along and the melodies are recognizable. But given the tragic history of these bands, and also that their music speaks about showing respect, not taking bullshit, being true to oneself, I find particularly difficult to just look the other way and go with the flow about how this thing has been laid out. The first evident, humongous problem one finds is branding these concerts as a reunion. In typical misleading form, the people in charge of promotion have done this intermittently to cover their backs, I suppose. Pantera reunion. Then, of course, it's not a reunion. Then again, the term reunion slips in. The desired result has been achieved, I guess. The word has made fortune. Now journalists, podcasters, and musicians who are punctually asked, they all speak of the Pantera reunion without a hiccup. I guess because it's a short term that sounds solemn and is easy to remember. Well, it is sad and awkward and embarrassing having to point this out, but a reunion consists in the original members of a band or some celebrated lineup from its past getting together again. And for that get together to happen, it's a basic condition that all those members have to be alive. Here, as we know, is sadly not the case with two of them, so I just find obscene the way in which the creators of this thing have been waving around the word reunion like that, until managing to make a misleading brand out of it. The only reunion of sorts that is happening here is between the singer Phil Anselmo and the bass player Rex Brown, and it isn't much of a reunion either when you consider that they have been bandmates after Pantera for a long time in their other band, Down. And certainly no one could ever say that the members who are missing in the quote-unquote reunion are secondary. We're not talking about an occasional background vocalist or an obscure keyboard player, which in the context of metal music are not central to the experience. What is absent here is the core of the band, the powerhouse, the main engine. For sure, the musicians chosen as replacement will be very competent, and these concerts will surely have merits of their own. But it really doesn't work for me that they tour as Pantera. For that to be acceptable, Zakk Wylde and Charlie Benante should have been involved with the band at some point in the past, and not only in some capacity of touring, but also as writers of some of the music. Why not choosing the solution Queen adopted after Freddie Mercury's passing? Now they tour as Queen and Adam Lambert. What's wrong with Pantera featuring Wylde and Benante? That way you'd still get the promotional kick as desired. You can stick the big fat logo for people who don't care about lineups and just want the ring of the name and the hits. But you still are making clear that there's a difference. You show some respect towards the band's history and its fallen. I think the way they have executed this, on the contrary, is ugly, distasteful, and misleading. And on top of that, totally unnecessary. Without Dimebag and Vinnie Paul, there's no Pantera. Period. It's not a matter of quality. They could have recruited Jimi Hendrix and Keith Moon instead. Choose the name of your own musical heroes here, and it would perhaps sound awesome, but it still wouldn't be Pantera. Speaking of the replacements they've chosen, I find dark points there too. Benante showed in an interview as his credentials that he was buddying with Dimebag, which at least suggests some kind of familiarity with the music. But Zakk Wylde, in another interview made only a few days before starting the tour, sort of bragged about still having to learn the parts, in a goofy tone that suggested that all that thing was for him was a gig, that he could be playing at a wedding instead if they paid better, for all he cared. What were these guys called again? Pantera? I find that attitude very disrespectful towards their songs and the fans. We're speaking of taking the role here of two very gifted and unique musicians who marked their own time and the history of metal forever, and who also both died in very tragic circumstances. It horrifies me to see how there's no emotion in this project for him. Well, dude, I'm sorry to hear it, because for me and for many millions of people around the world, there's indeed a lot of emotion. Pantera helped me not to jump from a building in my 20s, and I cried my guts out when Dime got shot. And years later, it was also a big blow when Vinny died all of a sudden, literally of a broken heart. I don't like that attitude of manufacturing acting silly because he landed the GC contract. It mocks me. It mocks the things that I love. It mocks my life. Judging from other previous news and declarations, I already thought of Zakk Wylde as a solid knucklehead, but this episode is what finished solidifying the evidence. But personal distastes aside, I also strongly disagree with all that hype that's been thrown around. Oh, he's a perfect person for the job. For starters, Wylde has great technique, that's undeniable. He surely has the chops to play all the required notes in the required order. But he's not a thrash guitarist, and he's never been. He plays hard rock, first for years with Ozzy Osbourne, who made him famous, then with his solo stuff, Pride and Glory, and Black Label Society. Not a single time before this Pantera jam he is so proud of having won, not once has he dabbled in thrash metal. It's just not his thing. And that has to show in the results, it's unavoidable. The closer he's got to the genre has been playing Black Sabbath covers, which is still a long stretch from thrash metal. I think any other candidate with at least some background in thrash would have been a better fit. My preference is with Gary Holt, guitarist for Exodus and Slayer, two bands that might sound familiar to you. I think he would have brought to the music a point of grit and aggression similar to what Dimebag had. A kind of grit and aggression that, for all its merits, you won't find in hard rock. In general, any thrash guitarist would be more familiar with the material beforehand, and they would leave it more from the inside, with love and respect, as songs that are not only content to be performed accurately, but songs they know because they have sung them at parties just because they like them, and that familiarity would for sure translate into better playing, because music is made of emotions, you know. People like Gary Holt would also have in common with Dimebag the fact of being a writer besides a performer, and I think that would also add to the quality of the music. Yeah, nominally, Zakk Wylde can be considered a writer too, but he really isn't very good. Black Label Society songs are quite plain and forgettable. I challenge you to sing one of their tunes right now, and they have like 100 albums. The truth is those songs and that group are more than anything a vehicle for his soloing. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing in itself, in its own context. Perhaps they don't need great songs. Perhaps the experience of a Black Label Society concert rips your face because of the great playing. But now look into your memory for some of Dime's tunes or riffs, and dozens of memorable ones will come to mind. My favorites are Walk, A New Level, By Demons Be Driven, Revolution Is My Name, Cemetery Gaze, Suicide Note Parts 1 and 2, Throes of Reaction. I could go on, and you'll have your own favorites too. Wylde is nothing like Dimebag was. Heck, they don't even play in the same genre. He's not the perfect person for the job. And the proof, in the end, is in the pudding. I have only been able to watch a few videos of songs of this band. The whole thing makes me cringe too much. But what I found in all of them is Wylde playing his solos on autopilot, which again I find insulting beyond words. The promotional machine is well oiled and has that aspect covered. Somewhere Wylde declared that of course he is not Dimebag, and his playing is a reinterpretation. That's fine and dandy, but a reinterpretation consists in listening to the original and then making it yours, giving it your twist, making your contribution. What Wylde does instead is what he does in all his music. Mechanical, interchangeable pentatonic runs, quick and mindless, all the same. He plays solos like someone who opens a faucet. 20 bars here, no problem, cash or card. In my view, he hasn't advanced an inch as a musician since the times of No Rest for the Wicked. He just milks his technique without contributing anything new or really conveying any kind of message or emotion. That he does this mindless speed racing with his own music is bad enough, but the fact that he applies the same recipe for the far superior music of Pantera, and to such emblematic and groundbreaking solos too, if the musicians involved were still alive, you could just label this as a sloppy job. But Dime and Vinny are no longer with us and cannot defend themselves, which to me makes the whole thing even more disgusting and vile. About Benante, I have less to say, I guess because I like the guy, and also because I know less about drumming. His playing doesn't speak to me like Vinnie Paul's did, but of course he's facing an impossible task, and I don't know how good or bad he's doing. At least he is a thrash musician, which seems to make some sense in this context. And as far as I know, he treats the people he is replacing and their work with the respect and reverence they deserve. I do have to say something, though, about the interaction between both new musicians, which for me is another huge problem in this whole Pantera mess. Benante and Wild are professional musicians, and you can hear it in their playing. They play perfectly on time, to the time of an imaginary mathematic metronome, that is. There's no locking in of one with the other. Each one is like in his own lane, focused on his part, with zero interaction or feedback with the other. And because of that, no matter how well they execute it, the music feels disjointed and sterile. Of course, no one could expect the level of connection that Abbott brothers had when they were playing together, just like you wouldn't expect you could replace one or both Van Halen brothers and not notice the difference. But some previous connection between the musicians of some kind is needed. Again, the creators of these things seem to have forgotten that music is about emotions, and this is not speaking about unicorns and rainbows, it's something that in the end shows in the results. It is not as if you could just take a nut from a machine and replace it with another one of more or less the same number. In this regard, if I wanted to hear Pantera songs in this day and age, I really think they did a way better job in the Phil Anselmo and the Illegals tour. To me, that music just sounded better, and I think it's because of this. Those songs were played by an actual band, by guys who knew each other and had played together plenty of gigs. It wasn't the Abbott brothers' chemistry, but there was some kind of chemistry there. And as a result, the songs sounded whole, united. This comeback thing, on the contrary, feels like professional sports, where you can't feel identification with a team because the moment you do, someone snatches the player you used to like with a bigger check and takes him to the rival lines. You can see it's all random, there's no team effort, just money in motion. Here you can perfectly imagine the two new musicians signing their contracts, planning carefully their flights for the dates. It has nothing to do with the fun and energy and camaraderie one would associate to any band, and in particular Pantera. And again, I don't mention this for some sort of romanticism of life on the road. The final result of all of this is that the music just sounds worse and not right. I really like way better the versions played by the Illegals, and not only because of the music. For me, those renditions had a feeling of underground that I felt was more authentic, more the role that Pantera music should have in the 21st century. It showed in people's reaction too. The music was alive again, kicking people in the butt. On the contrary, this stadium thing they are doing, playing to a sea of cell phones, has a cold, museum-like feeling that I totally dislike. All of which begs the question, why have they decided to do this? Super quick first possibility that comes to mind, living in the greedy, uber-capitalistic world we're in. The cash grab. Like I said at the beginning, I wouldn't necessarily be against it. Musicians are battered and swindled in so many ways in our days that who could blame them for using a winning hand when they have it? As long as things are done respectfully, without all these problems I've been mentioning, I'm perfectly fine with musicians publicizing their work under the best light they can find in order to attract more money and attention. That said, I find difficult to believe that the cash grab is the main motivator here. Maybe I'm naive, But I have a feeling that things cannot be that simple. Firstly, Phil Anselmo, who I assume must be the mastermind behind this project, has always projected an image of himself as the man who says it like it is, a metal music geek, and a bit as if he was the gold standard of metal purity. All of which could be seen as just a character he plays, like many public personalities do. But the truth is, he also has the works to show for it. One may like his work after Pantera more or less, but what nobody could accuse him is of yielding to commerciality, of following the easy path, or sucking up to trends in order to sell more. I cannot imagine him plotting, hey, let's sell this thing as Pantera, we'll make lots of money. The money factor will for sure be a nice plus, but I don't think it's central here. So then we get to a second possibility that's a bit nicer, that there's in this a certain sense of mission. The feeling perhaps that these songs are good and necessary to be listened to right now, in our current world of growing conformity and fear and people enslaved by little screens. Using the Pantera name then and the reunion decoy would have been a strategic decision as a way of ensuring that this music will reach more people than if it was played as the Illegals or any other formation. But doesn't that defeat the whole purpose? You want to bring liberating music to more people, and the way of bringing that people in is by deceiving them? Isn't that just paternalistic plus taking advantage of other people's sickness? Where's that new level of confidence and power here? In which way is this a worthy cause when you resort to such means? The third option I can think of touches the field of mental disease. I don't think this is far-fetched, considering the world we're living in and the people we're ruled by. Mental dysfunction and collective mental dysfunction is prevalent wherever you look. Could this just be then like some giant collective exercise of nostalgia? Something like, hey people, here is this. If we all squint our eyes and our ears at the same time, we can all pretend that this band is Pantera, that this is a reunion, and Phil can think he's the singer of Pantera, and Rex can think he's the bassist of Pantera. I just don't have more ideas to explain why they have manufactured this thing and done it like this. But I want to end these thoughts as I started. Maybe all that counts is that those songs are still getting played in whatever form. I was lucky enough to see Pantera in its moment. For those who couldn't or weren't around then, maybe this thing is the second best, or third in my view if you count the illegals. But to me this is not Pantera, and it certainly is not, it cannot be a reunion.